What do you say we make a podcast, dude?
Let's do it.
Let's make this happen. Hey, welcome to the show. Good to finally meet you.
Yep.
After having every mutual friend in the entire world, apparently.
Yeah, and living in the same city.
Yeah, and somehow never crossing paths.
Not once.
Not even once.
Yeah.
But here we are. We're going to get to know each other real well because you're about to tell me your entire life story.
Okay.
On a podcast.
Yeah.
But I'm stoked that you were down, man. And it's funny because, I mean, obviously, like, again, tons of mutual friends. I have seen so many different things you've done over the years. Always been kind of right on the outskirts of, again, you doing those things realistically. And that is one of the biggest things that I am excited to dig into. Like, again, we're getting to know each other for the first time. But I feel like we're very similar in the sense that there's just a bunch of different things that we do or have done.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you've went from bands to entrepreneurship to different brands and companies within that entrepreneurship realm.
Yeah.
And, like, it's also funny because I had a mutual friend, Nick Reed, on the show a while ago.
Friend. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And it's funny because, like, again, like, he and I were friends, but I was always kind of right outside of what he did. And I remember sitting down with him and I was like, man, like, I feel like, you know, you're like a serial entrepreneur. And he was like, actually, no. He's like, I'm always the friend who helps the serial entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And I feel like you're kind of that person. Am I also off base on that? Like, I'm not saying directly related to Nick, but like, I would take a guess to say that I feel like you are also that serial entrepreneur type.
Yeah, for sure. And I probably fall somewhere near where Nick said he landed, where I'm like, I don't usually like to be the center of attention, and I don't like to be like, I don't like putting myself out there as like the thing.
Yeah.
But I do love building things, and like whether that be companies or music or, you know, whatever the thing is. Like, it's definitely my thing that I do with my life that I was just drawn to naturally. Right. I like taking my ideas and trying to turn them into, you know, my occupation.
Yeah. Well, I will say that I feel like you've done a good job, at least from my perspective, of not having the spotlight always be on you, because every single thing you've done, I very casually in a roundabout way found out that, like, you were one of the people in charge of it, or one of the one of the creators of it. So, like, so many times I'm like, oh, there's this cool brand and like this friend of mine works for it or whatever. And then eventually someone's like, oh yeah, I was working with Sean the other day and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, and they're like, yeah, it's his idea. He did it. And I'm like, had no idea. So I will say you've done a great job at not taking all the credit for everything.
Thank you. Yeah.
Because I'll know of a brand for so long and then find out that you're one of the people who made it. And I'm like, damn, there he goes again.
In some ways, my life would probably be easier if people knew I did things.
Right.
But yeah, I definitely naturally don't hop into the spotlight usually.
What that's honestly interesting to me is especially in today's day and age where like if everybody's not a social media influencer and has CEO in their bio, then like nothing matters and nothing can be built. But I feel like, and again, that's like one of the things I am excited to talk to you about is like, I feel like, and obviously, of course, correct me if I'm wrong, but each brand that you've been a part of or helped start or started yourself or whatever has always sort of like naturally, organically grown just from like, here's good marketing, here's just good branding, here's just a good, fun product that we're, I guess, you know, partnering with the right people on, promoting to the right people. And now you sitting here and be like, yeah, I don't really like to take the spotlight. I feel like that's an interesting balance, especially, again, in today's day and age where you're not jumping on social all the time like, hey, what's up? It's Entrepreneur Sean. Like, you know, launched a new brand today. Like, and not that there's anything wrong with obviously talking about the things you do, but what is that balance like for you? Are you ever like, damn, should I be talking about this more? Or
Absolutely.
Like,
yeah.
Okay.
I think that's, you know, I stay out of the spotlight, or I have in my life, like up until now, like, because I like spotting opportunity. I like spotting, you know, whether it's a, you know, a mix of situations where it's like, oh, you could build something out of this that people want, or if it's something somebody else is doing where I'm like, hey, they have like a really cool thing going on, but they don't build the company around it. They just have the thing. Like in music, that'd be an easy example where it's like, okay, here's this person who writes incredible music, but they are just in their basement writing incredible music all the time. Like, it's not gonna get out there if they don't organize and like have a, you need basically a company when you're a band, or at least the structure of one, to book shows and do all the logistical stuff that it takes to get your stuff out there in an organized way. So that's always been something that I naturally drifted towards, and probably contributed to me not being in the spotlight. Was like, I'm looking for things that are already happening usually, and finding my way in and building something up from there.
How, and maybe there is no actual process to it. Maybe you're like, dude, I don't know. I just sort of just do I say that I'm interested, and then I'm a part of it. But like, how do you become a part of someone else's idea? And I'm asking that almost from a personal standpoint, because that is another big thing that I feel like you and I have in common. Is I feel like I'm a big identifier of potential, or what's missing, or I can see somebody doing a thing and I'm like, oh, this additive to that would actually be really cool. And like, I feel like yes, sometimes I do it for sure, but I also get caught up on, how do you approach somebody else and saying like, hey, let me help you with your idea? And almost less than like a tangible, like, let me shoot a video for you, or let me take a photo for you, but more so, let me help with the marketing, the storytelling, the whatever.
Yeah.
How have you approached that over the years? Is it just like, hey, we happen to have a mutual friend and I want to work on this thing? Or is it like, how does that happen for you?
For me, it's always happened naturally. And I will definitely like preface it by saying usually nothing happens. Like, usually you spot something like that and you try to think of ways you could contribute, and there's maybe just nothing there, or someone else is already doing, they're already starting to do what you thought would be cool, and you just kind of have to be like, wow, well, you're doing something great. I don't have a spot in it. I hope it works well. I'm gonna enjoy watching you do that. But sometimes you'll see someone doing something and you'll spot like a deficiency. That's not a nice word, but like, you'll see an opportunity for them to do it better. And I don't know about like how you reach out, but like, if you have something to offer and you're able to communicate it to that person in a way that like clicks in their brain, then why wouldn't they bring you in? Because they're trying hard to do whatever they think is cool too. And there's no point in like protecting your ideas from other people. Usually, like, sometimes people have an idea and they're like, oh no, like they shell up because they're like, I don't want anyone to take my idea, which is, a valid thing to be worried about. But like, if you do that, you're completely missing out on, like, you better be able to do all of it if you're going to do that.
Right.
And I bet you can't.
Well, you can't do anything completely by yourself.
No one can. We're all just people. So like, when you're able to offer something, and this is also vague, but like, it's, just a conceptual thing, I guess. Like, when you're genuinely coming to someone with an idea to improve the thing they're doing, and it fits into what they're doing, and you're able to provide that, and you're willing to like invest in it yourself, and show them that. Usually in my life it's been other friends, so there's an element of trust there. But if that's not there, if you can gain that trust from that person, then it seems to me like crazy to turn that down if someone approached you.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, we're going to dig through the entire timeline.
Yeah.
But I honestly do want to dive straight into what I believe is the newest endeavor. There could be something since then. Tallon Electric, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
How does that come about? And also, I mean, what is Tallon Electric? And also, like, just how does that entire thing come to fruition?
Yeah, so Tallon Electric is a guitar pedal company. So if you don't know what a guitar pedal is, I know your audience is pretty broad. You know, you have a guitar, you plug the guitar into the amp, and it makes guitar noises, right? So there's guitar pedals or something you can put between the guitar and the amp that make different sounds. Sometimes it makes it wiggle, and sometimes it makes it sound like crunchier. It could do any number of things. So we make those. That's the most basic part of that, and that's yeah, we're gonna have to like tell my whole story to get to where I started that. But but it's definitely like a culmination of all of my experience so far.
Okay.
Which now that I say that out loud, I'm like, that's a lot of pressure. But
don't worry, we'll get to the story, pal.
Yeah, but it is. It's been fun because it brings together a lot of the things I've done in the past with music and business.
Right. And I mean, that's a huge chunk of your story. Again, always kind of being right on the outside of, knowing you essentially. Like that's a huge part of your history is music. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I would say that's probably the whole first half
it's like
of
the entire
story, right?
foundation of it.
Yeah. Well, so like, was that kind of almost where you think I'll just say, entrepreneurial spirit or mindset was molded, or does it go back even further than that when like, hey, I was, my so-and-so in my family was a business owner and it planted that seed for me? Like, where do you feel like that even thought process developed? And I'm also going to add one more caveat to the question of, it's easy to be like, oh, well, I was in bands and then, I understood you had to brand them, and then now that led me to making companies. But man, I'm gonna be honest, and I feel like you could probably agree with this. Like, I've met plenty of band dudes who don't know shit, and couldn't, aren't gonna take a, I understand how to market something. They're just like, I want to make some noises and have some fun. And what the hell do you mean we need to promote this? So I feel like there is something unique with you that is able to translate the understanding of, yes, of course, good marketing and branding helps our band and all this sort of stuff, but being able to develop that into launching brands, helping companies, whatever, selling products, like, I don't feel like that can be overlooked. You know what I mean? I feel like that's something unique. Yeah,
it's definitely, like, when I look back, going back even to, like, middle school is probably when I remember, like, I loved skateboarding. I was never good at it because I was too scared of getting hurt, but I did it all the time. Me and my friends, always skateboarding. And I always, like, when I think back, I was always like, oh, we should make like a skate team. Like that was the thing back then. Like every skate shop and every brand company that made skateboard stuff had like their team. And locally, like if you ran with a group of friends that skateboarded, you'd make your own little team. You'd be like, oh, we're all like part of this thing. And you'd want to make like skate videos, and you'd like want to make shirts and turn it into a thing. Or maybe that's just me.
I'm not to interrupt you, but 100% so.
Okay, maybe that's just us. I think that might,
which is why we're on a podcast.
Right. It's like I don't. So, but when I think back to that, I'm like, I think that's more of a sign of like who I am than it was like that turned me into an entrepreneurial type.
Yeah.
Because like also when I think back. I've never like gone to the doctor or anything, but I'm like, when you like read ADHD symptoms and you're like I'm checking a lot of boxes here.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I don't know. I just was never good at like doing well in school or like listening to whoever was in charge. And if you're not good at that, like you better be able to do something yourself. So that's what I drifted towards, starting with that. And then, going into high school, when you skateboard a lot, you meet music people too. They cross over a lot. And I was also playing instruments. I started playing bass when I was 11 because my neighborhood friends decided we were going to start a band. None of us played any instruments or even owned instruments.
It's a great place to start.
Yeah, so good. But we were like, yeah, we're doing this. And I was assigned bass, which I had never even heard of at that point yet.
Okay.
I I figured it out quickly. I knew what a guitar was. But
You're like, hey, less strings.
I'm like, okay, 4 and it's low.
We
Like,
got
all right. Then it's like, well, when I listen to music, I can hear that.
Yeah.
So there was an interest in music. I had started playing bass when I was 11. All of the skateboarding friends that I hung out with in middle school, we all went to the same high school and started meeting other people that are in bands, and we were like, we can do this too. Like, that'd be cool. We like learned about screaming and that kind of music, and we were like, that's us. Yeah, that's going to be our personality. Yeah, so that's where that started. And then getting into band stuff. So like, I was probably usually at least one of the people. The band I started in high school with my friends was called My Ticket Home, and that was with a couple friends. One of them was named Nick. He was the front man, and I was like, okay, well, we can figure this out. We played guitar well enough at that point. I'd been playing bass for a while. His brother was like 12, and we were like, you'll be our drummer. That'll work fine. He learned how to play drums. Turned into a great drummer.
Must have worked. Yeah. I've heard the music. It works.
Yeah, he's just excellent drummer. Starting out, I don't know. We just saw that, I guess, and we started that band. And I usually fell into like the role of logistical guy, figuring out like, okay, when we're going to shows, we need this stuff.
Classic band dad role.
Like, yeah. There was a band dad, Mike. Mike was our band dad. Nick's actual dad. Yeah.
Okay.
And he could drive. He had a car. That was pretty important.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, because we were all like 15. And so like, Nick was probably more the like creative lead there, at the very beginning for sure. And I fell into the role of like, okay, when we record, we got to like talk to this guy and we'll go do that. And when we, need to make video stuff, like I'll figure out how to make it. None of us are good at it, but I'll figure it out. And that's just kind of the role I fell into at that point that made sense to me. And when you go back, it's like, that's like a supportive role that you have the guy out front and you're trying to build everything around him to make sure that it's working.
Right.
He's busy being out front.
So was the trajectory from that, like, did your world just become music?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
And
it
was
all
like
through like at least junior and senior year of high school, all music, all the time. We'd leave school, go to Nick's house, play covers or try to write our own music, or we tried recording ourselves at one point, and just trying to get to the point where we could start going out and playing shows with the other local bands and start making a name for ourselves. Right.
Mm-hmm. And so I guess, does that then kind of become the quote unquote the dream at that point in time?
Totally.
Is it like, nothing else, I'm not worried about, hey, sorry guys, we're canceling the skate team. I've got, I've got a tour coming up. Like, we're trying to get a Warped Tour over here. Like, is that just the trajectory over the next handful of years? Because I know, My Ticket Home was around for a handful of years.
Yep.
Was that just kind of what it became for you, where it was like, all right, I'm just going to do whatever I needed to do over here to support the dream of being in this band?
Yeah, I don't think I was even worried about school. I was like, we have to go. That's not an option to not go. So we would go to school. But all other, everything was dedicated to music at that point. And we had that like dream to become a real band. Probably most of what helped us like believe in that being possible was that our freshman year, Nick had Spanish class with this guy Johnny, who was in a band called Attack. And our sophomore year, or like somewhere right around then, like 2007, they signed to the big label that like signed all the big bands that we listened to, that we liked, and they started touring. And we were like, wow, they're doing it. We know them. They're our friends. Like, there it is. Like, if they did it, we can do it too. Yeah, it's not just like something you see in a magazine or something. That definitely probably not directly. No one at the time ever would have said that, like, oh, since they did that, then we can do it too. But, it's proof. It's like, oh, right there, like they did it. That means it's worth it for us to go all in on this and, believe that it could work. So we did that all through high school. We all skipped graduation to play a show that it was like Attack CD, second CD release show at the Newport. And like all the label people were going to be there, and they invited us to come play. And yeah, like our parents were like horrified that we weren't going to graduation, understandably.
Right.
But we were like, there's no chance we're going to graduation at all.
I mean, yeah, at that point in time, fair.
Yeah.
Like, who's choosing graduation over playing a show in front of potential label reps? It lines up perfectly.
Yeah, with the, the headliner band that's doing really well for this label having our back and being like, hey, like, yeah, check these guys out. So we did that. Nick was sick. So it like went horribly. It's probably one of the worst times of his life. You'd have to ask him about it. But I thought it went okay. He did not. He was not happy at the end of the show. But we graduated high school. That was June. Like sometime that summer, we ended up signing a record deal with them. They were called Rise Records. And from there, that was kind of like where that chapter wraps up for me.
Okay.
Because soon after, we signed somewhere in the middle of summer, and by November, Johnny, the guy that Nick had Spanish class with, who was the singer in Attack, stopped being in Attack. And they all, I remember we would hang out at our friend Caleb's house, his parents' house, all the time. He recorded our music. He helped us write stuff, and he was one of our best friends back then. And so we were hanging out around the Attack guys all the time. And I remember being at Caleb's parents' house, and they all went and had this meeting with Johnny, where whatever happened, I think he told them that he was done doing being a band guy, and they came back to Caleb's parents' house, and they're like, we have this headlining tour coming up in 6 weeks, and we need to find a singer now. And I was like, I sang and played guitar in my ticket home, and I was like, hey, I'm here. I'm already here. I generally know your songs.
And
you guys
do know how many strings are on both the guitar and the bass.
Different
now,
number. So. And yeah, I was like, okay, well, you guys have all said I'm a good singer, so
right.
Let's try this out. And they went for it. They let me try that out. And so for the next 2010 till the end of 2012, 2 or 3 years, I ended up singing and playing guitar for them on tour. Things like Warped Tour and these club headliners and stuff. And so that for me was years 17 through 20.
Okay.
I was doing that straight out of high school. So that definitely took what I was doing in high school that was starting to be look entrepreneurial, and cemented it. It was okay, mm-hmm. You're plucked out of regular world now in band world, where I wasn't in charge of anything, but I was there with them all the time while they're making these decisions, and they're planning these tours, and there's financial stuff happening, and I'm just around it all the time. And I don't know, I guess just who I am, I'm paying attention to that stuff. Mm-hmm. I think it's interesting. And that's probably where I kind of started realizing oh, okay, this is just what business is. Business isn't there's no rules. It's just you have an idea and you figure out how to use it to make a job for yourself.
Yeah. Do you feel like you can, and you kind of did just say this, but do you feel like you can almost directly correlate that unlock to your experience being in bands? Of just oh, I'm seeing how we operate this as a business, this band as a brand. there's a lot more decisions than just walk on stage, play a thing and then walk off stage and whatever. So do you credit that to like that time in bands? You're like, okay, cool. This was something that was in me, but this is when I really started to identify it.
Yeah, I wouldn't say there was any one point where I like literally said like, this is, this is what this is.
Companies in the future.
Yeah, but looking back on like how my life has gone, like that's definitely what cemented me into like the curse of being an unemployable entrepreneur person.
Yeah. Isn't it like the coolest thing and the worst thing to be unemployable?
It's so cool. Yeah.
Do you have that thought where you are like, we were talking about it a little bit before we rolled, of like, isn't it so fun to be stressed about everything at all times because like you are in control of your life and you want to do all these different endeavors, and at any moment you're like, it will all crumble, it will all stop, and I need to go just get a regular job somewhere. But then when you think about that, like, I don't know if you're like this, I would assume, but like you think about like, man, it would kind of be a little bit easier just to go and get a regular job, but then you're instantly like,
I envy that part.
and then you just feel like kind of disgusting. And I'm not trying to put anything down, like I'm really not. I'm really not. But like just the way that I tend to think, I'm like, it becomes so difficult, and that unemployable word is truly what I would label myself as. Because I'm like, man, like I like to think that I would show up with the best version of myself in any scenario I'm in. It doesn't mean that I would go be lazy or not care if I had a job I didn't like. But man, like internally, I feel like it would just destroy me.
Yeah, there's, after Attack, there's like a good 2-year period where I work at Starbucks. So I have like a good insight into me. That's not, I wouldn't say that's like a real adult job, I guess. It's a perfectly fine job, but I was like 20. So
right. This episode is sponsored by Starbucks. Thank you guys.
We love Starbucks. I drink it all the time, but that's because it's available.
It's what's around.
I'm not making like a statement about myself when I order Starbucks.
That's their new Hey, if you need branding opportunities, Starbucks, check this out. Hey, Starbucks, it's what's around. That's it.
Yeah. But yeah, so I worked at Starbucks for 2 years, and like I can't turn off my like ideas having.
Yeah.
And so like I worked at the Starbucks inside the huge Chase office building in Polaris. And there's 10,000 people working there. And we are one Starbucks in this building. So it's like line out the door all day, every day. And the people who ran it were always coming in being like, gotta get these lines down. And I'm like, boys, like, we don't have enough machines to get, like, it takes this long to make coffee, and the line's longer than that. So, like, I'm like, we need to either open one at the other end of the building, or we need to, like, restructure how we're doing things here. And when I zoom out, I'm like, they don't want that. Like, it's not the employee you want.
Right.
You want the employee who's just like, all right, and then you do the thing they asked you to do, and that's your job, and you clock out and you go home.
And that is the thing. Yeah, they and I don't want this to be a super negative thing, but like, you want the employee that doesn't think. That's what they want.
Yeah.
Like, it's just no. Don't have ideas.
That's
just
not
need you
your
to
job.
make the coffee.
You're there to do a job, and that is not your job.
Which is so wild.
And I can't not make that my job. And then I'm a huge pain for, whoever is directly above me. Because they're like, would you please just listen to what I have to say and, like, do that and then shut up. And I try for a little bit and then I can't. And so, yeah, it's like I envy so much sometimes people who thrive in, like, quote-unquote, like, normal environment. Because I'm like, wow, you get a paycheck that you're not responsible for the money behind that paycheck being available. And, as long as you do what your role is, well, that's all you have to worry about. Like, you don't have to worry about, like, I don't know, whatever job you're in, there's probably support roles around you doing other things. And it's like, they'll do that job. Like, I don't have to think about that.
Right.
I envy that so much. And there's definitely nothing wrong with that. The world would not work well at all with people like us. So my wife thrives in her job, and thank God, because we have health insurance, and I can like fail reasonably without bring our entire family down.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Crazy. You said the word insurance? What did
insurance,
you say?
it is out there.
Yeah.
And if you try to buy it yourself, it's like triple the price.
Right.
So it's all great. Yeah. Should we turn this into a healthcare podcast?
We could. Yeah. What are your thoughts?
I don't think we should. We'll go to jail.
That's true. You talk too much, you go to jail.
Yeah. But I lost my train of thought, what your question was. But it's just part of who I am, I think. I realized it while I was in the band. Well, it's just like, this is what I think is fun.
Yeah.
And this is where I gravitate. And I think that in a band context, I'm regaining my train of thought. In a band context, it's like you have these hyper creative people. Caleb, who was the main front guy in Attack while I was with them, is that guy. Like, dude is the top level creative dude. Like, if you think you're creative, he's more creative. And if you think you can do something well, once he focuses on it, he can do it better than you. And that type of person, like, I'm not that person. And I think like I'm too worried about like the logistics and like the less I don't know, out there stuff. I like organizing.
Practicality.
Practicality,
logic,
yeah. Like I'm not out there like dreaming usually. And being with Attack, I was like, I play this role well. Like, I play the support role well, where like there's someone here with a great idea and a special talent, and I can make their support system work pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
And my job there was to play guitar and sing, but I think I just realized it at that point. I was like, okay, that's kind of where I land.
Yeah. With this whole like mindset talk that we're talking about of like, oh, I can have all the ideas and I can be in the middle of an environment and identify 5 things that I wish we could do better, and the company or whoever might not want to hear that. Like how often, even to this day, do you wish you could ever just turn that off?
Yeah, because it's inconvenient. Like everything I'm doing, I have to like be super involved in. Like man, I wish I could just like an example I think about often in life is we would be in the bus with Attack parking, and you'd be like in Chicago or like somewhere where parking a bus is like madness, and I'd be up front thinking about what's going on, like with the driver and one of the other guys who was like in charge of that type of stuff, making sure that went well. And I'd be like involving myself, like looking around, like figuring out where stuff is, like what do we have to do to get the bus in this spot. And I would like be really stressed out about it, and suddenly I'd be like, this is not my job. Like, and just walk to the back of the bus and like watch TV. And I could consciously remove myself from that, and I catch myself thinking back to that thought all the time in life, where I'm like, this isn't my job right now. Like if I'm out at the store and there's like something going on that the workers are trying to solve, like I don't need to get involved. Like they don't want me to be involved. I don't need to be stressed about it. Yeah. Like just keep walking. It's not your thing.
I have those similar thoughts though. And it doesn't come from a place of like, I think all of my ideas are the best and I could do everything better. It's just like this natural like problem solver mentality.
I just like it. Yeah.
Oh, well, what if we did this like this? Or what if we spice this up in this way or added this over here? Mm-hmm. Like that would probably make that a little bit more convenient, or that would make that a little bit cooler. Like where I still run into that the heaviest, I would say, is when I am sitting down with other friends who are even slightly involved in any sort of creative endeavor whatsoever, whether it is, video or music or comedy or whatever. And like, man, if somebody shares like a glimpse of an idea that they have, my brain just naturally go, and not from a place of, oh my God, I have to be included, because I got enough stuff going on. Like I shouldn't add anything else to my plate. But I like cannot stop myself from being like, well, how much have you thought about that idea? And here's how it could be possible. And have you thought about doing it this way maybe? And what if you branded it like this? And maybe you could promote it online like this. And like, you know, most of the time they're like, oh my God, yeah, just okay, keep telling me this stuff. Like I haven't thought about it this much. But like it for some reason, and feels like a blessing and a curse, it comes so naturally to where it's hard to turn it off. It's hard to not just immediately be like, oh, well, what about this, and that? Like, not saying it's the perfect steps, but maybe it could do something. And so I'm constantly trying to reel myself in, you know, going off of, you know, what we talked about way back at the beginning of this conversation of like always finding a way to kind of, you know, offer yourself up to somebody else for their idea, or find a way to help with it or whatever. I have had to make a conscious effort. The further I get in life, to prevent myself from wanting to attach myself to other people's endeavors. Like,
and you have to recognize it. That's a big part.
Right.
Like, oh, I do that. Like, and it can go like, there's 3 parts of it where you have to watch out, where it's like, one, like you said, you have so much on your plate already. Like you can't be adding more to your plate. That's one thing. And then there's like the other side of it too, where it's like, okay, there's parts of this that people can be happy about, where they're like, oh, someone's like excited about my idea. It feels good to like share your idea and see someone like light up when they tell you, when you tell them about it. That's validating. But then there's also the side of it where it's like I do this to my wife all the time, and I have to consciously not. Like, she tells me an idea, and I'm like, here's 4 things that are wrong with that. Like, I don't say that literally, but in that's where my brain goes. And it's not from a place of like criticism whatsoever. It's me getting into this mode where I'm like, here's some things that might stop us from achieving that. Yeah, so and logically, how can we make it happen? I think maybe we could like get through those things. Right. It's like, dude, she was just telling me about like something annoying that happened at work today, and she wants me to be like, oh man, that is annoying. Like, there you go. Like, I listened to you. My brain is like, how do we solve it?
In 4 months, I think you could be in charge of the place if we just do this, honestly. Like, then that problem won't exist. Like,
she's like, do not do that. That's very annoying.
It's a hard balance. Like, I actively will catch myself on that too, where again, it's not from a place of ego, or it's not from a place of like, I'm the smartest person ever. It's just from like this weird internal whatever it is in my brain that just kicks in out of almost excitement to try and solve a problem, or to try and spark inspiration, or try and motivate somebody of like, no, that idea you talked about, here's how I could see it being possible. Let this be some sort of inspiration, or let me motivate you in some way to try and pursue it. And hey, I can't do it for you, but I'm totally down to help you brainstorm the next 4 steps for you to get there. And like, in that balance is like a tough one, because for me, over the years, like, I would get too attached to somebody else's idea. Like, I would get too excited. I would want it more for them than they wanted it for themselves.
Right. Like they were just like, I mentioned this. And now you're really into it.
Right. It's like, and I'm like, hey, I didn't, remember 6 months ago when you said you kind of wanted to maybe make a poetry book? Have you started writing it? And they're like, oh, maybe. I
haven't thought about that since I brought it up.
Right. Like,
it's just trying to make conversation. You're like, I've been thinking about it for months.
And that's it's weird, because I'm like, I haven't stopped thinking about it for you. Like, don't worry, you didn't have to think about it because I did. Like, but that thing, I mean, a lot of that was really difficult, honestly, when I worked with bands all the time. Because, I worked, quote unquote, in the music industry from, pretty much getting out of high school to a handful of years ago. And, that trajectory was, a mixture of like photography, graphic design, music videos and stuff like that, but also like de facto managing bands and stuff like that. I wanted to work for a label for a bit. But like, what kept happening is like, and I don't mean this in a negative way to anybody, but like, I always cared more than the band cared.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just about my ideas, but it was like, you could do this and you could do that, and then what about this and what about that? And they're like, right, yeah, that all sounds really cool, fuck. And I'm like, when do you want to do it? And they're like, oh shit, like I don't know, man. You know, it's just like, and then it just turns into nothing. Like,
recognizing that is like, I think for, I don't know, everything you're saying, I'm like, okay, we're the same type of person probably, at least at a base level. And like part of getting older, something that I've learned as I get older is like, you can't like waste your time when people aren't as into it.
It's
like
huge.
Even if you think it's a great idea, it's
Yep.
like it's not going to work if they're not into it too.
Mm-hmm.
So like, not that that person's a waste of time or anything. It's just like, don't sink all your time into this project that they aren't also going to sink, because like, especially if you're playing like a support role, like if the person you're supporting isn't into it, like you're not, what are you supporting? Yeah, getting older, I've recognized that a little bit more and learned how to like when to pump the brakes on myself.
Yeah, 100%. And again,
Yeah.
it's all part of that balance that we're talking about of like, I get excited. I think, you know, logically how someone could pursue something, but I also had to learn over the years of like, how do I not project my own wants and needs onto somebody else?
Yeah, because that person might just be like, they just felt like thinking out loud. Like
Right.
They didn't put this out there like the way that you heard it. Like they were putting it out there as like, this could be cool. And then maybe they thought about something else, or they thought about it more and they're like, maybe I wouldn't like doing that. Like whatever. Yeah, but I feel you there. I get attached.
Yeah. and I would. I mean, luckily, you know, again, it's what we all do with life. But it's like so much of that was my younger years of like early to mid 20s and stuff like that was, you know, just wanting to work with bands and work in the music industry, and like any band who had like a good song, I was like, oh my God, you're the next thing. Like, let's do everything. And then like, they didn't even want to be the next thing. You know, and again, I'm going to be also fully honest and say, you know, they would say they wanted to be the next thing.
Right. Yeah.
But I wasn't capable of identifying like, do you actually want to? And then also effectively now I've spent 2 years of my time and energy giving so much to your project because I truly believe in it. Mm-hmm. But I don't really think that you believed in it. And now I sank myself into it so much, I'm now leaving angry, you know, because I'm like, man, I can't believe, we're not doing it anymore because they didn't want, you know, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, man, like I built up this resentment, and everything is always 50-50. It's not just one side or the other usually.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And so like, you know, it would be a mix of like, oh man, why didn't you guys try harder? But also it's on me of like, why was I pushing so hard? Why did I just give like,
why didn't
so
I recognize?
Much? Yes. Being able to recognize that and reel it in a little bit. And nowadays, like, I catch myself a lot more. Mm-hmm. Like, I still will have exciting brainstorm conversations with people where if they mention an idea, I'll be like, oh my God, let's talk about it. I love that. But I'm also very quick to, you know, if they are like, do you want to help? I'm like, depending on what that help is. Yeah. Right? Where back in the day, I'd be like, yes, tomorrow we start.
Or like, the ideas will be running in my head, and I'm like, I'm not going to let these out until I can kind of see that you're like maybe, you know, you'll send me an email that like, not you, but you know, whoever this person is will send me an email like, hey, it'd be sick to do this thing. And my brain is like, oh yeah, that would be sick. Mm-hmm. But nowadays, maybe I'll respond with like, kind of like a lukewarm, like purposefully lukewarm email and be like, let's see like how they respond. Like let's test the waters a little bit before I go all in here.
100% of like, well, what else can you bring to this idea past just the idea? Yeah. And then we'll see what I want to bring to it.
Yeah. And I think that's like the way I think of it, I guess. I'm going to make this up as I go. I'm trying to like get thoughts out of my head and out of my mouth, but like it's kind of like I'm 32 now. I'm young, but I'm also getting old. Like if I think of myself and like these habits that I have that like make me who I am as like a tool to walk through life with, like I'm learning how this tool works, like the things it doesn't work well on, the things it really works well on, like when to use this and when it's not a good thing. Yep. And like just getting, if you can have some self-reflection and like whatever it is that, you know, you struggle, if it's like admitting that's who you are, or just even like reflecting on yourself to see that's who you are, or whatever, like maybe it's not who you want to be, and like just accepting that it is, whether you like it or not. Like, it's just recognizing that stuff and being like, okay, well, like if that's the way it is, then like what can I improve, what do I need to suppress, and like how can I use this in the world that I'm in, understanding that other people aren't like this, other people come at things from totally different angles that I'm not capable of seeing, and like I don't know, that's what life is, I guess.
Has any, no, I do agree, and has any of it, you know, the entrepreneur spirit or just the creative mindset, you know, whatever we want to call it, like, has it ever given you like almost a lonely feeling? And I'm asking that from a place of, it has for me, where, again, we've talked about over the years, you give so much energy to things, you hope it works out. Maybe whoever you're working with doesn't reciprocate that energy. You're kind of left, resenting it a little bit. I gave too much, whatever. And like the older I've gotten, because we're pretty much I actually don't know how old I'm about to be at my birthday. I think we're the same age.
Dude,
I guess, is that what happens when you hit?
I had been saying I was 33 for most of the year, and I like had a meeting with someone and told them my birthday, and they like typed it into their system, and 32 popped up. I was like, oh,
I think
I'm 1 year less than I thought.
I'm 31 or 32. I genuinely can't remember.
I was born in July 92.
Okay, I was born in February 93.
Okay. So you're gonna be 32, I think.
Two?
I
don't know.
I'm not good. Remember when I said I wasn't great at school?
We're sitting here on a podcast like, we think of so many business ideas. Can't do basic math, folks. Yeah. Neither of us can. But you know what?
Don't math need it. On a calculator.
Don't need it. I have a calculator. Thank you very much. But what I was saying is, like, you know, the older I've gotten, it in ways has almost made me feel almost self-alienated sometimes. Because like you said, you know, you have to realize, okay, not everybody thinks this way. Not everybody is going to get excited about the thing that might excite you, and that's okay. Not everybody has to try and, you know, keep up or, you know, whatever. But you carve out your lane, you figure out what kind of quote unquote level you're operating on, you figure out like what you want to do within that. And then how does everybody else support that role, and how do you play a supportive role to everybody else? For me, that has felt incredibly lonely sometimes, because I've almost felt, I guess the only way I can explain it is like I've almost at times felt wrong for thinking and caring so deeply about creative or business ideas. Because, you know, you work with or meet so many people over the years that maybe aren't meeting your level of excitement or interest or capability even. And sometimes that's maybe, I'm like, why the hell can't I just like let a thing be a thing? Like, have you felt any of that? Am I just like completely off base?
No, I think you're probably more social than I am.
Okay.
Based on that.
Yeah, okay.
Like, I like have a pretty small group of friends. I think I get along with people well, I hope. But I'm like, I have noticed like I can only do this. Like, this is what I'm interested in, and it's all I do. Is you make these businesses. Like right now, it's the guitar pedal thing. So it'll be like my friend Johnny that I talked about, who left Attack, and I took his spot there. He started a new band called Bill Murray. And when I started this guitar pedal brand, I was like, okay, I have this idea. It seems perfect because I can take my music background and my business background, and I've always wanted to get back to music stuff because I like being around it. But I don't want to like write music. I don't really want to make music that bad. I'm not good enough at it to satisfy like myself. I need to be really good at whatever I'm doing. Right. And so I had this guitar pedal business idea. And I was like, okay, maybe like there's a lot of guitar pedal companies out there, basically, like really small ones that do really niche stuff that are great. There's a ton that are really cool, which means like it's a saturated market. You can't just be like, here's my cool thing. Like, I hope you like it amongst the other cool things. That's not how things work. So I kind of thought of this angle of like, what if we do guitar pedals in collaboration with bands who have an audience already, and we make these guitar pedals for that audience. Like, that audience is full of people who play guitar, who make videos of, you know, them playing these band songs, posting them on YouTube, like whatever. That's something they do for fun, and they probably want to feel closer to the band when they do that. Or, you know, like, most people haven't spent a ton of time figuring out how to make a guitar tone because they have more important things to do. I have. I did not have more important things to do when I was younger. So, like, here's a way I can help you. Like, you know, throw this in your signal chain, and it'll help you get the sound you're looking for. So I had that idea. I was like, okay, that seems like a good approach. Other people aren't really doing this. There's a couple other companies who have done it, but it's not like who their company is. And so I was hanging out with Johnny. Johnny has this band Bill Murray now, who are doing really well. But this is a couple years ago when they're starting to do pretty well. It was becoming clear that it was like, this like can be a full-time, this can really work. Like, Johnny's been pouring everything into this, but now it's like crossing that tipping point where it's like, okay, this is a real thing now. He was right at that type of tipping point. And so I was just hanging out with him, and I was like, would you be interested in like doing a Bill Murray guitar pedal and seeing if your fans like buy it? And he was down. So we did that. That's how this company started. I was like, I have this idea, like, since you're my friend, I'm able to like see if you want to try this out with me as like proof of concept and like allow me to use your name. So very thankful for that. And it worked. It worked really well. We built this guitar pedal, offered it to his fans, and it sold out. We made like 50. We were like, that is either not enough or like 10 times too many. We have no idea.
Right, yeah.
But we made like 50, and they sold out in like 10 minutes. It was crazy. They sold out so fast. And as soon as that happened, I was like, oh, well, I guess I have to like circle back now and make a company for this to support this idea. Because everything was just like, let's throw this together, make the product great with like, there's nothing behind this product yet. Like, we only made this product, made 50 of them, put it on the internet, see how it goes. It went well. And so that's how this started. I have no idea where I started on this rant, but like, yeah. That's how that company started. Do you remember what the question was?
You know what? I honestly don't.
Who cares?
It was somewhere where we were like, man,
were you captivated?
We were like, we have a lot of ideas, and then you're like, one of the ideas was this.
Yeah, we can't focus either is a thing.
No, what else do you want to talk about? Yeah. Something I am curious about, because I feel like you said this earlier. Was the whole idea like? I'll say, like, I'm not a guitar guy. I'm not I don't understand the inner workings of a pedal. I understand what they are, of course, but like, was that a thing that you had done over the years? Was like makeshift your own pedals and stuff, or was this like a new endeavor that just popped up where you're like, I want to make a pedal company. Hey, Johnny, let's try this thing. I guess I'll find some pieces and parts and we'll try and make one. Like, how do you? I mean, and of course, I'm not asking for like a step-by-step process, but like, how do you even go about like building a custom guitar pedal that you can then sit and be like, oh yes, this is specific to this in our brand, and now I'm going to build a company around it. Like, had it been a thing that you kind of already had a background in?
No. I mean, yes and no, different parts of it. So like the part that I came into it with already knowing was how signal chains work between the guitar and the amp, how you make certain sounds, like what you do in what order to the signal to make it sound the way you hear it in your head, or the way you hear it, in someone else's song. That was what I came to the table with already. And that takes a long time to learn. You have to be into making music pretty much to have ever encountered needing to use that skill. And the electronics side, as I've like mentioned, I'm bad at school. Never been to a day of college. I would do terrible in that environment. Once high school was over, that's it.
Yeah.
That's the end of my educational story.
Yeah.
So I had built guitar pedals for fun. So you can buy kits where it's like, okay, here's the circuit board, here's all the parts go into this spot, you solder it all up, and you hope it works. I'd done that just for fun. It's like Legos. It's like a fun thing to sit down and hyper focus on and like just do. I'd done that a lot. And the more I did it, at first I was like, this is a cheap way to get a ton of different sounding pedals. And I like building them. So that's fun. But as I kept going, I was like, I need to know more about what I'm doing. And I like, you look at the schematic, like the drawn out, what the electronics are doing and how they're connected. And it looks so foreign at first if you aren't educated in that. But over time, I was interested in it. So I just kept coming back to it until those schematics, my brain was able to connect like, okay, this is just a signal chain. It's just a new set of parts. And that's how I was able to like start making my own stuff. It's like, okay, here's these parts, here's what they do. Once you can practice enough to get into your head what those do when they're in whatever arrangement, then now you're moving back into the thing that I already knew about. Like, you EQ it here, whatever.
Right.
Get too technical, but
of course, yeah. If you start to get too technical, I'd be like, right, you plug the thing into the thing, dude. That's crazy that it works that way. Yeah.
But it's all making it louder, clipping it and EQing it, changing the way the tone sounds, and you're doing that in a sequence to find an end product.
Yeah. So I do want to dig more into Tallon. But I also do want us to revert back and like fill in the gap until Tallon's
after Attack.
Yes, because I mean at some point are you just stop being in bands? Like I know you said, there was 2 years of Starbucks after that, like and we had the whole conversation about like, oh man, can't turn your brain off, thinking too much, blah blah blah. Like during that time frame, I guess what sort of like state of mind are you in during that time? Are you like, I needed to leave music behind and just maybe keep it as a hobby or whatever. I don't want to be in bands anymore. I'm going to really give this quote unquote regular job a try. Like take me back to that time frame. Like where are you at?
So Attack stops being a thing. And I got a job with Taylor Lumley, who you know very well. We worked nights at Hollister folding clothes. It was terribly depressing type of job because it's at night. You're just listening to music, folding clothes. That was also, I got really into Plans, like the Death Cab album, which contributed a lot to how depressing that was. Fair. Love that album, but not a great night shift type of album.
Right.
Where you're like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life.
And I'm going to sleep until 2 p.m. tomorrow.
And I'm only awake when it's dark.
Yeah.
And I'm only listening to Plans by Death Cab. Not a great combo if you're trying to be happy. But did that for a little bit, got the job at Starbucks, did that for a while. The whole time I was doing that, I was like, I need to keep doing the band thing, play guitar and sing in a band. And I wrote some of my own stuff, and I ended up joining a band called Truslow. It wasn't called Truslow yet, but I met James, who's a piano player and a singer. Super talented guy, great songwriter, really, really good singer. And I fell into the role I always fall into. I was like, okay, you're really good at this, but you don't know what you're doing with a band. He was like a church dude. His background was all church. So that's all he knew was playing music at church, and he wanted to do a band. He was all in. This is not a case where it's I have an idea and this person isn't invested in it.
Right.
He was also all in. He was like, I want to do a real band, not, not a church band.
Mm-hmm.
And this was lined up very closely with 21 Pilots, like blowing up.
Okay.
So like 2012, 2013, and he knew them from church world. So he had just gone through a similar thing that I went through in high school, where it's like, oh, these people that I know, who I've worked with before, and like who are my peers, like it worked for them. Like
Mm-hmm.
so let's go, let's try it. So we did Truslow for a while, made a bunch of stuff I'm proud of, but it never really took off. And I was doing that, working a job, and where this all like ends up being is not music at all. So music just kind of like turned into a fun thing for me. It was like, okay, this isn't going to be a job, over the course of like 2 or 3 years. It was like, okay, this isn't going to just blow up. And I don't think it's, I don't know. I'll keep trying, but it's not looking good as far as like this being a job. And being in band world, everyone I knew smoked cigarettes. I didn't, but everyone else I know did. And so everyone I knew either was hanging out at or got jobs at this store called Alt Smoke on High Street.
I also knew a bunch of people in the year
really?
like 2014 who were like, I work at Alt Smoke.
This
like,
is the same time period. You know this well. Same people, same time period. We'll just assume all the listeners know exactly what we're talking about. So Alt Smoke was a vape shop, and this was like when e-cigs were like the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like it blew up, and the news was like, "What's e-cigs?" And so I ended up hanging out there a lot, even though I didn't smoke. And this was like a really small, like grassroots industry, and there were all these like so you'd fill your e-cig with this liquid with nicotine in it, and there were all these companies that it was like, this was like gold rush, like you make liquid, and like there's some people who are like making millions of dollars doing this. So, and it's easy to get into if you like figure it out.
Yeah.
And so like at the store I was like, there's like 3 or 4 brands here that look terrible. Like this looks truly awful. And I know people who make great looking stuff. I can't, but I know people who can. What I can do is figure out how to make this and figure out where the bottles come from and like how to make it and put it in bottles and like, build a business.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm doing that. And so I started that in my mom's basement, like the most e-cig thing possible. It's like running a liquid company out of your mom's basement. That was me. And that started, Nick Reed was like the first person I had helping me. So he was playing that role that he talked about doing. I was the one with the idea this time. It wasn't like an outward facing like company or anything, so I was comfortable. And we started that, and like it just worked. It didn't blow up out of nowhere. It like, we were gaining momentum, and we got an office, we moved into an office, and it was doing pretty well. We hired a couple people. One of them was my friend Zach Belcher, who I just assume because you know everyone I know. And he had an idea called Big Bottle that was very self-descriptive. It was just like, hey, let's sell this stuff. This stuff was like so cheap to make. Like,
Okay.
Most of the cost was the bottle that it was in.
Gotcha.
Like the liquid was so cheap. You just had to make a brand that people liked and flavors that were legitimately good. That was like the hard part. He had this idea for Big Bottle where it was just like, this stuff's so cheap, let's just sell it in a larger quantity for a lower price. Like, it's just, the market was asking for it. A lot of people were mad. But we did that. Obviously, everyone wanted it because it's cheaper. It looked good. We had good flavors, and that really did well. So from like 2014 or 15 through 2020, That was our thing. We had like 14 people total working on that. We had like a big office warehouse thing. That's where I learned the most. That was where I was like, okay, now I'm like in charge of this. I had three other business partners, so I wasn't like alone in this. I had other people helping me run this, and we had Nick helping run it too. And that was where we were like, okay, like I had time to like run this business and learn stuff and like really get comfortable doing that. It wasn't music related whatsoever. But yeah, over those 7 years, it's like, okay, run payroll and like find insurance and like do, all these things that you need to do with businesses.
Right.
That set me up in a way like, those are just tasks. You just knock those things out. But once you've done it before, it's something that like makes you more confident the next time you do it. It's like I've done all these like things that like are floating around your head when you're starting a business where you're like, I can't start a business because I don't know how taxes work or like whatever thing is scary.
The systems, the operations.
Of like I don't want to get in trouble because I don't know the rules, like whatever. That allowed me to like get through that. Be like, okay, I've done this before the official way. I have met lawyers and accountants now and like done all the boring stuff. No offense to them. It's very important. We need you. And that set me up so that when we ended up stopped doing that, we stopped doing that in February of 2020, unaware of the pandemic. Pandemic happened. My wife and I had our first kid in June 2020. So like 2020 for me, like a lot of people, I guess, was just like I did nothing related to work really. It was just like we just got out of this huge like 7-year company thing we did. We just had a baby. Like just gonna do that because I don't have another idea yet. I know I want to start another business. I know at this point I'm not employable. I can go get a job, I'm sure, and I don't know. I'm sure there's a job out there that I'd like doing, but like it's specific at this point, and my resume is not something that a recruiter would like looking at. I don't think. They'd be like, you started a vape company after your band? Right. They'd be like, okay.
Tell us about your Starbucks experience right here. That's what we want
to know. It's like, yes, that went really poorly. I kept trying to like expand out of my role without anyone asking me.
Is Starbucks looking for a new CFO, anything, CMO? What are you looking for?
It's like, what's your education? High school, like nothing more. So 2020, I didn't really do anything. And that's when I was making guitar pedals for fun all the time. And that's kind of when I learned how that stuff works, and the idea came together for Tallon Electric.
Okay. So do you just jump into Tallon from there? Or is there like...
I was hanging out with Johnny, and I was like, I have this idea. It seems on paper or, in my head, this makes sense. I think it'll work. We built the Bill Murray pedal. We designed it, built up a little bit of stock, released it through like his channels, and it worked really well. So that was when I was like, all right, I think I have a new thing now. We'll see where it goes. There's no guarantees ever, but I'm like, okay, the feedback I'm getting and like the results I'm seeing make this seem like as a person with 2 kids and a wife and a house, I can safely bet on. Like, right. Investing my time in and working on, and that was like 2-ish years ago. So ever since then, it's been a matter of building up this company. The back inner workings of it. A huge part of it is collaborating with other bands. So it's been like, okay, going through my network again of these people that I haven't talked to in forever. Totally my fault because I don't talk to people. But like reinvigorating these network things that existed from my time in music. That was a weird word choice, but we'll go with it. And trying to find another person who would be like, hey, like, yeah, I'll let you try making a thing for my band that is my livelihood and like something that I've curated. Like, I'll let you into that.
Right.
And so luckily we've found a couple people who like let us do that, like Johnny did. And it feels like now, hopefully we're getting to the point where it's like, we've probably done enough to earn the trust of a few people and start working with bigger bands and like going, making 4 or 5 or 6 pedals a year with these bands and releasing them out to their fans. And that's it. That's the business for now, at least the way I see it right now. Like, you don't know how it'll change over time, but
yeah. Now, I'm curious, like, during the 'cause 7 years is a long time to have like a business.
Mm-hmm.
It was just Big Bottle was like the focus during that time.
Yeah, that was like 95% of our sales.
Was like, were you at all during that time like, I need my like creative variety back, or was it just like, man, Big Bottle takes so much that I was able to just like, all my energy was going into that?
That's a great question. No, I like didn't get much out of Big Bottle most of the time.
Okay.
One of my partners in that business was really good about like, let's take this and grow it. Like, he was in his zone, and I was out of my zone. I was like, this is working well. Like, the systems we have in place are working well. Like, I don't see anything I want to change. So I'm not that interested anymore.
Interesting.
Like,
yeah.
I'm interested in maintaining that, but like, there's not a big problem to solve right now. We'd love to like double in size or something, but I didn't see an opportunity to do that. So like, when I don't see that, like it's tough to motivate myself to do anything. So like, we like got our house around that time. We were able to find a house that needed a lot of work, and that's what I did. I worked on my house.
Yeah.
I like finished my basement that allowed me to start this pedal company now. And I renovated our whole house, which I'm not like a house. I didn't really know how to do that, but it like fits who I am so well to be like, let's learn how to build this stuff.
Yeah,
like,
well, lots of problems to solve when
it's
you're renovating
Legos,
a house. Yeah.
but a house. That's what I spent all my time doing.
Okay.
I got super into that.
Yeah.
I did that for like 2 years probably.
So,
I mean, I was still going to work every day, but like my creative energy was all into the house.
Okay, so a lot more problem solving than it was like, let's start a new brand.
There were a lot of problems to solve there.
Right,
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Now, when Big Bottle comes to an end, is there, and I guess you kind of touched on this a little bit, but like, was it like relief of like, hey, you know what, I can focus on being, a dad now and then living this life, and we'll just see what comes next? Or was there a part of it that was like, whoa, hold on, like, I was kind of comfortable with how this was working, and now it's gone. I don't have my next idea yet. Holy shit, what do I do? Like,
yeah, there was a lot of layers there. So there's definitely the like, I don't have my next idea yet, and I don't know how to whip that up into thin air. A lot of it is, a lot of these ideas are like opportunity based. Like, you see something happening that you're like, right now there's a spot I can fill there. So it's not like when you're coming up with these ideas, at least not for me, like, it's hard to whip it up out of thin air. It has to be like a combination of circumstance and like prior experience that just meets and see an opportunity and go for it. Didn't have that. I was trying to force it for sure. Spent a lot of time thinking about it, but I'm not good at forcing things. And the pandemic happened, so that played a huge role, obviously. And like, I'm not a huge social person, so honestly, like, being at home was not a problem for me.
Yeah.
And it was like, you can't even go out. And I was like, I never did.
You're like, oh, dang.
Yeah, it's like, oh, like, I don't know. You won't find me hanging out at a restaurant ever anyway. So
you were writing the text of like, sorry guys, it's pandemic. You wrote that to like last year. You're like,
no one even asked, because I was already that person. It's like, there was no like, oh, Sean's staying in. It's like, no one even invites me anymore, and I'm fine with it because they know I don't go out. I love seeing people, but I don't go out. So And we had our kid. So like,
Yeah.
it was like, okay, that's a whole part of life that we have to learn how to do now. So I was very occupied. I was worried in the background at a base level of like, I don't have the money to live the rest of my life. That's for sure.
Right,
like,
right, yeah.
That's not a factor here. So like, I will need a job at some point. And like, you always think like, will I need to get a real job? Like, and just figure it out. Like, I'm sure I could if I had to, but like, yeah, luckily the pedal idea came around before that time was up.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, were you a part of Ope Cold
Yeah,
Brew?
yeah.
Okay.
That was one of the things we did for a while. So we
Okay.
did with Nick Reed and one of our other friends, Luke Shomo, who's one of the partners in me and Luke do the pedal thing together. Yeah, we started like a cold brew company for a couple summers.
Yeah. When did that start?
It was like 2022.
Okay.
Was
okay.
probably like when we started. Did that like 2022 and 2023. And it was cool. Came out great. I loved the coffee, but it just like didn't make a lot of money. So eventually we did it for a couple summers and we were like, it's a lot of work and we all have families. Like, this is fun. We're having fun doing this and we're like proud of the thing we've created, but like money's not there. Like,
yeah, from an outside perspective, everything like Ope branded, I was like, this is the coolest. And I'm not even like a coffee
dude,
drinker.
that's Luke. Luke is so good at branding.
Right. And I'm just like, oh my God. I'm like, everything about this company just seems like the coolest thing in the world. Like, yeah. Actually, I can't remember. I feel like I with this podcast did like a giveaway.
Yeah, I think
or some
pretty sure we
sponsorships.
did.
I think I ran some ads for Ope
pretty
on
sure we
the
did.
show.
Probably
yeah.
through Nick, I'm sure.
Yes.
Set that up. Yeah.
But yeah, I thought Ope was a thing. Now, was it more of like a because obviously you were then shifting focus into how do I figure out this pedal company? Mm-hmm. Ope sounds like it was like at the same time during that. Like, and I don't know if we're going to take like a deep dive into that, but like, where does that idea even come from? Is it just like is it one of those random things where it's like, I saw an opportunity to do this, it sounded fun, let's make it happen, and then, hey, it didn't turn a ton of profit or grow, so then we shut it down? Or like, how does that, because I mean, it sounds like it simultaneously kind of pops up when you're starting to work on what becomes Tallon, right?
So Ope was happening before I started Tallon.
Okay.
So Tallon came up while I was doing that.
Gotcha.
Ope was like, it was a little more forced than like, it wasn't 100% natural. It was like, I want to start a company. Here's an idea that seems cool. And I know we can execute, we can make a cool looking product. I can sit here at home and brew coffee until I make something that I think is really good.
Okay.
So like none of it was disingenuous at all, but it was definitely like, I didn't have that, that ingredient there that was like, this is the like right thing happening at the right time. It was more like, I know we can do this and let's put it out there and see if it catches on. Mm-hmm. And it got some momentum, and it's definitely not something I'm not proud of, but it was just like, we're adults with kids, like as like pure as you want creativity to be. It's like, it has to make money if you want to keep doing it.
Right.
So,
right.
And it, I don't know.
Because
we weren't losing money, but we weren't making a lot, and it was a lot of work.
Right. Again, outside perspective, like you guys were in stores and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you set up deals and all that sort of stuff. Like, and again, of course, at the end of the day, a business has to be making profit and give reason to give it more energy. But I mean, again, from an outside perspective, I was like, this thing seems like it's going pretty well. Like, this is cool. Like there's all these stores you were developing partnerships with, and again, just the branding itself, just everything seemed really just well put together. And I say seemed as, I mean, it was.
Yeah.
So from an outside perspective, I would definitely be like, man, I thought it was like one of the coolest freaking things that I had seen pop up. And again, I'm not a coffee person.
Right.
Like, I was just like, this is such a cool brand. And I do think that there's something unique about, like, it's cool for me to hear a story like that, even for you to be like, it wasn't disingenuous, but it wasn't exactly like the most heartfelt thing it was sort of just like I wanted to do a thing. Somebody like me, at least, I still think that is really cool
Mm-hmm.
to just have an idea and then make it that possible.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To make it that real. Because I feel like there's often ideas that I have that I can tell isn't from like the depths of my soul,
Mm-hmm.
but is something that I do think would be interesting and fun to do.
Yeah.
I wouldn't hang my hat on it for the rest of my life, but it's a thing that I would love to almost bucket list, check off the list of like, I did that thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I had a brand like this. And oftentimes, like, I feel like sometimes I stop myself from getting started on those ideas
Mm-hmm.
because I'm like, well, am I doing it with every bit of my heart and soul? But then I also have this other part of me that's like, no, but just do it for fun and hope it catches on.
Yeah.
Hope it works. So I don't know if any of that makes sense, but what I'm saying is like, I think it's still a dope thing that you guys did.
Yeah.
And especially again, to make something like that a reality. Like,
Yeah.
I think it would be cool to have a coffee company, but if you were to say like, cool man, what's your next 3 steps to start it? I'd be like, no fucking clue, pal.
Oh,
Like,
those 3 steps are where I live. That's my favorite.
And that's my thing is I'm like, and that's not to say like, oh my God, everything's so fun and easy. Like, no. That's half the reason that I like over logic a lot of my ideas, that even though I think they're creative and fun sounding,
Mm-hmm.
the practical part of my brain kicks in and I'm like, but how? Really, how do you tangibly do that thing without needing a bunch of money and a bunch of all this sort of stuff? Like, how can you make it?
Yeah.
And so for me, when I think if someone was like, start a coffee company, I'm like, hey, Sean, how'd you guys get bottles? Like, how do you do that?
It's actually a huge pain getting
like,
bottles.
How do you get a partnership with a store? Like,
Yeah.
those things, like, that just seems like such a cool endeavor.
It was.
I
It was.
guess.
It was
Like,
fun, and I learned a lot from it. Mostly that, like, probably more learned like why it didn't work than like what did work in that particular case. But I'm probably more motivated. Like it sounds like you're motivated by like the like soul and the heart of the idea and like how it that thing that's hard to describe, but like I'm probably more practically minded and like practically motivated by like I want to do something, like I want to put all the things in place. I really like the process, and then I want it to do really well, like measurably well, and like how I feel about it or like how it makes other people feel specifically probably doesn't motivate me as much as like a lot of the people I've surrounded myself with who are like very art minded and like less practical, maybe, I guess you could like describe it that way. That I have part of that in me, like I can be creative, but I also like am not interested in doing things that aren't working. Like I lose all interest in it if it's not working. I want it to work, and then once it does work, if I don't know how to make it work even more, I can lose interest then too. Like I love the process and I love building it. I love getting it to a spot. And then once I get it to that spot, if I'm out of ideas or if it's not responding to my input anymore, then like I lose interest in it.
Right.
It's, not great. Like sometimes I need to keep focusing on it and I have to fight through that. But I'm definitely a person where it's like, if I'm not good at something, you won't see me doing it. Like I don't like not being good at things.
Yeah.
And if I'm not good at it, then I don't want to do it anyway. Like not just because of other people, but like just for me. Like I don't want to do it anymore.
Do you feel like you value the attempt at least? Like the like, hey, I don't exactly know how to do this thing, but it's the challenge of solving the problem of how. And then once you try it, if it doesn't work, you're very comfortable with being like, never mind.
I know that there's like value in that. But I don't get a lot out of it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Like,
so you're very
and I recognize like it's I don't ever want to be like ungrateful for like we did the coffee thing and a lot of people supported us and like that's great and I appreciate that. But when it comes to like internal motivation, like that doesn't fuel me that much. For me it's all in my own head Total narcissism, terrible. I'm just kidding.
Good, great.
Yeah, but no, it's all in my head.
Yeah.
Like growing up, like I was an only child until I was 8, so like I don't know how much of it is because of that or just who I am. Like I can when I was a kid, I could open Legos and not talk to anybody and like build the whole thing. Like, and I was happy that I was able to build it, and I didn't really care what other people, like external stuff was not a motivating factor there.
Yeah,
it's like, I want to build this. I think it's cool. I want to get this to the end thing. And once I'm done, I'm not as interested in it anymore.
Right.
Usually. And I think that's just the way I'm built.
Well, that's and like I asked that because like from my perspective with those things, like I value the attempt, but I'm very quick to also get tired of things.
Yeah.
Like if it doesn't feel the way I thought it was going to feel, I of course am either going to be like, well, how do I get it there? And then maybe it does motivate me to work harder to make it work, and then I know I really want that thing.
Yeah.
But I'm also very comfortable with, if I try a thing, it doesn't hit how I thought it was going to hit, or doesn't make me feel how I thought it was going to make me feel, I am comfortable to be like, okay, what's the next thing I can try?
Yeah.
Like I'm very, in a somewhat similar way, like motivated by the, like, I want to just kind of keep trying the different things. And if this thing doesn't work, cool, I can be comfortable to sit and be like, all right, it didn't work.
Yeah.
Didn't work. That's okay, because that's not where every single bit of my life was tied to. I wanted it to work. Definitely. I put some time and energy into it. I would love for it to make money or make whatever, but I'm going to go and try this other thing over here or this other thing over here. And I personally feel like I will always be like that. And I'm curious to know, like, now with what you guys are doing with Tallon, like, do you feel like you're like, yep, this is the next thing that I'm doing and we're going to see how it goes, and then I can't wait for what the next thing is after that? Or are you like, hey, remember we talked about being in our 30s? I'm slowing down a lot. I don't want to keep having things to do.
Yeah.
Like, are you still looking for those next, business brand challenges or ideas? Or like, do you sense yourself being like, no, I'd like just a thing to work and then I can just kind of hang out otherwise? Like, where do you see yourself going?
Right now I am all focused on Tallon Electric right now. And I'm like a very single track person anyway.
Okay.
So like from like big picture stuff like that all the way down to like, if I need to like write a text, I can't be talking to anybody. Like I have to do that. I can't do two things at the same time. So I guess like, I'm usually all the way focused on whatever I'm doing.
Okay.
I think that probably helps me. It's also weakness. Not good at like juggling a lot of really different things. So I guess I don't think about this very often. I don't really look past like what I'm doing right now. I'm really only looking at what I'm doing right now. I'm not like thinking about what I've done before. I'm taking what I learned with me, but I'm not thinking about it. We stopped doing OPE, and I don't really think about it anymore. I can look back and I can manually think back on it and being like, that was a great thing I did with my friends. I'm glad I did that. But like as far as like motivation or like how I feel about the thing, like I don't think about it anymore.
Yeah, you can have a healthy detachment from it.
I'm detached. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So I'm like only thinking about Tallon Electric. I always do that with whatever I'm doing. Yeah. Single focus on it. So not always good. Like sometimes great, not always great. But yeah, I'd love for Tallon to like become a thing that I can do for a long time. But I haven't thought about really 10 years down the road. It's like it's never when like growing up when people are like, what's your 5-year plan? I'm like, who could ever plan 5 years out? Like, there's so many variables that could happen. It's not even worth my time to think about what's happening 5 years out.
My problem with something like that is, yes, I will ask sometimes similar questions on this show of like, hey, where do you see yourself in the future? What are new things you want to do? But when I think about those things, though, I'm less of like a what's your 5-year plan, and I'm more so like what's the next 5 ideas that I could start tomorrow or next year. You know what I mean?
I've never had 5 ideas.
See,
I
that is where. And see, but I can almost
have
counter.
one idea at a time.
And I can almost counter, though, and say this is that classic, like, things are not just black or white, right? Everything's usually amalgamation in the middle of, like, I can sit and say I'm a little bit jealous of you being able to really go all in on your one thing at the time because I can't.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't mean that I can't give a bunch of energy to a thing I want to work or want to be successful, but I enjoy, and I do think I'm pretty good at it, but I don't think it's the best skill necessarily to have where I can juggle 10 things at once. But I also think there is value to being able to be like, well, what if instead of giving different percentages to each thing, you were able to give just one singular 100% to one thing?
Yeah.
And there's a whole other conversation about what
when
that
the
actually...
one thing doesn't work, my way is not so great.
Right. And also I think, there's value, if you are doing multiple different things, like it's easy for me to, one day I'm giving 100% to this one thing. The next day I'm giving 100% to this other thing. Like not all the things need 100% all the time. So I, again, have acknowledged I could do a lot of stuff at one point in time. But again, my brain is wired where like I am the idea person where I'm like, this thing sounds interesting to me, or that thing that someone's doing seems interesting. I would love to be a part of it. And I'm always like, what's another thing I can add to my list?
Yeah.
Like what is the next thing I can be doing? And so again, in a way, I'm like, man, that would be kind of nice. I feel like to be able to just sit and be like, yes, I am focusing on this one thing right here.
Yeah.
But that's even why I asked you that question too of like, is there anything else kind of in the back of your mind or something else? Because that's how my brain works. I'm always like, somebody could be like, oh, you launched that new thing. I'm like, yeah, it's awesome. Like, cool. So is that what you're doing? I'm like, no. There's these 6 other things.
Yeah, I know. That's how I see you. I'm like, he does so many things, and I don't know how he does that. Because I can't.
Right. And that's it. That is the thing. It's like, it's just, and again, I'm not saying it's the greatest thing ever, but like, that is, my brain is just wired like that, where I have to do a new thing.
Yeah.
And not out of like, oh my God, I'm so unhappy if I don't, but I'm just like, I just want to experience stuff.
Yeah.
Like I love the idea of just like saying I did a thing, saying I had a, clothing line fresh out of high school, back in the scene days when that was like the coolest thing to do.
Oh, yeah.
I had one, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, I had a clothing line for a minute and I learned these things from it and I took it into this next thing I did. And it's like, I do want a huge experienced, joy-filled life.
Yeah.
And yes, some of them are business endeavors over creative. So yes, I do want things I do to really pop off, to really work,
life's easier when you have a little bit of money.
Exactly.
Let's not lie here.
Right.
Like, there's bills,
Yeah, that's life is difficult and money helps solve that difficulty a lot. So it's like, of course I want these things to be successful. But at a base level, I'm still kind of always like, okay, what's another thing I can be involved in? What's another thing I can be involved in? And I kind of don't know why that is. Like,
I think like life is a lot easier to accept once you like step back and you're like, this is just how I work and this is the world I'm in and other people work different. And like, I can dig into it all I want and I can look at like the ups and downs of each way and like try to adjust the way I am. But like, I don't know. I don't really believe you can like fundamentally change like that type of stuff about you. About like the way you like take in input from outside and how you process it and what you do with it. You can, people can change their actions and like what they actually do with those things. But as far as like how you see the world and bring it in, it's like, I don't know. That's like it's a deep thing, man.
Right. Yes.
Like what world are we all seeing? You're like, I'll never be able to see the world the way you see it. Like, It's not even like a thing that, in my head, that's the type of thing where I'm like, that's not even worth my time to think much about because I can't change it. Yeah. So it's like, that's just what it is. I know the way I work. Let's keep going.
Right.
If Nick Reed's listening, he's going to crack up at that. He's going to think that's hilarious. But
something else I'm curious of, and like, At a base level, I'm sure I know the answer to this question because, again, we just said life is hard, life is difficult. But, like, I do always want to know, like, when people find different levels of success in things and they continue to pursue different ideas and become a different, part of different things, I would venture to guess that it's not a wild thing to say that it's very easy that anywhere along this path, it could have been a very easy and probably maybe even very doable choice just to kind of stop doing any of it at any point in time. So my question is, like, has there been a part in this entire story that we've been talking about? Like, I did this idea and then it was music, then it was this, and this sounded exciting. Like, was there a part during any of it where you were like, I don't think this is going to work, and I don't think this is kind of even worth it anymore. What am I doing? Like, I love being a part of things, but, like, what's the point? Let me just go back to Starbucks, or let me just chill a little bit. Like, has there been that moment of, like, I don't know, difficult process of, yeah, things are hard. Obviously, starting a business is hard, all this sort of stuff, but, like, has there been that moment where you were like, dude, is this even fucking worth it? What the hell am I doing? Like...
Yeah, I mean, this is gonna be like, no, I've never struggled.
Yeah, I've not had one single struggle.
I think, like, I've had plenty of bad days, bad months, like when things aren't working for me. But, like, I think the approach that I take is, like, so fluid all the time that I usually don't feel stuck.
Okay.
Usually. Like, I've felt that way before, but when I do feel that way, I start looking for ways out. And, like, by ways out, I don't mean, like, quit what I'm doing. Usually it's like, how can I change these circumstances to, like, be okay?
Yeah.
I mean, like, Attack ended. Like, there was a lot going on that wasn't just me, but I was also ready to stop doing it at that point. But usually I don't look at it as, like, this ended, and so I'm not doing it anymore. Like, I've been lucky enough for that not to happen really to me yet. Just to have the rug pulled out and be like, okay, this is something I wanted to keep doing and I can't anymore. Everything has always been so, like, one step at a time for me that I've just been like, when I'm able to, like, foresee something not working, I start changing direction before it's a wall that I hit. Like, so I guess, like, that makes it hard to identify, like, single points where it was like, that didn't work, and it, like, set me back really far. It, like, took where I was going, and I had to, like, completely stop, like, backtrack and change directions. I guess I'm just, like, maybe always changing direction a little bit, and always, like, looking at, like, so with Tallon Electric, it's like I know what basically I want to do with it, but I'm not married to how I need this to go. Like, how I need this to go is for it to work. Like, and I don't really care what it looks like in detail in like 3 years if it's working. Like, I don't have a really specific vision of how it goes. And I guess I could see that turning into something where it's like circumstance makes it different than what I was foreseeing far out. And, like, now I'm disappointed that it's not the thing I was, like, married to in my head. I don't think that far out, I guess.
Yeah.
So, I mean, where that probably is missing parts of, the good things in life there is that, like, I don't really ever get to where I'm trying to go. Like, the goalposts are always moving for me.
Okay.
If I'm close to achieving something, the goalposts move. Like, there's very few times where I'm like, I did it. Like, I finally did it.
Interesting.
Very few times I feel that way or even care about, like, what I did. I'm like, yeah, that's what I wanted to do. Like, that's what I've been working for. And now there's something else that I need to be working for. Yeah. And I don't have time to celebrate this or much interest in, like, celebrate this.
Yeah.
Like, there's another thing happening that I want to achieve. And once I get there, I won't care about it that much either. Not, I won't care about it, but like, getting there is not like part of the fun always for me.
The achievement feels different for you.
Yeah, even like, I mean, as something as basic as like traveling. Like, if I get in the car and travel, like, once I get to, if we have to drive all day, like once I get there, I'm never like, we got there. I'm like, now we have to unload the car. Like, once we unload the car, we have to put our stuff away. Like, I'm always like, what's the next thing? I don't know how my wife lives with me, but I don't know. It's who I was when she met me, so I guess she's fine with it. I'm making myself sound terrible here, but
but to be honest, like you're not the first person that I've talked to about this stuff who has said very similar things. Where, yes, there's a lot of people who do fall on the side of like, oh yeah, I'm kind of always, I'm accepting the big wins and I'm, blah blah blah, checking it off the list and then excited for the next thing. And there are also people who are like, I don't take a lot of the celebration time. I don't really kind of sit, and not in a negative way, just in a very like, this is just the way that it is. I'm just like one thing to the next to the next. So this is not the first time I've heard that exact thing.
I'm really leaning into like, I hope I put this out there and other people are like, oh, that's how I am. I'm really hoping 100% of people are like, this guy is not appreciative of anything.
Yeah, this guy doesn't care about anything. Well, then I don't care about his brand. He doesn't care.
This guy sucks, and I'll never will support him.
This podcast just
I'll support him, and he won't even care.
You don't need my support anyway. It doesn't matter. You're not even excited about it. Yeah, this podcast could derail your entire
I'm done.
Career of anything.
Find me at Chase.
Doing anything.
Getting to retirement and getting laid off right before or something.
Yep, exactly. Hey, if you do get to retirement, you get like a T-shirt or something.
I think you
spend 40 years
when
there.
you are almost to retirement, they fire you. I think that's what happens.
Yes, they said, hey, you will get a Starbucks mug and a T-shirt.
Yes,
but we're actually not even going to give you that. We're gonna set you aside
if you go there and buy one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would ask, the kind of cliche question of like, what do you feel like is next? But I mean, I guess we kind of said that the focus is just growing talent, right? Like that's kind of.
I mean, when we're talking like, well, I've been talking about work stuff only, pretty much. Like, as far as my work life goes, like it's talent is like has all my attention right now, day to day. Like, I'm serving that whatever it needs. I'm trying to find more people to work with. I'm trying to figure out if they have ideas of like sounds they would like to share with their fans through these pedals, would those ideas sell well? Like, there's a lot of cool ideas that would not sell. Like it has to sell. Like, so day to day, like getting new collaboration things going, working on the ones we have, maintaining the ones we've already put out and make sure we're still promoting those things. And like, it's the internet now. Like, you think you've promoted something, it has not reached that many people in reality. There's a lot of people who have not heard about it at all. So you got to keep pushing and serving all these like past, present, future things. I really like doing that. So that's where I live, and I assume if it's worked so far, hopefully it'll keep working.
Right.
As far as like into the future, it's probably a lot easier to like answer stuff like that with like, I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. It's like that kind of stuff I can look further into the future and be like, oh, like what we're doing today affects that. Like that's not a business. Like, that's totally different. It's easier for my brain to be like, okay, that's something we're investing in for the future, and like I'm excited to see that happen, and like I'm excited to see them like achieve things and hit goals and stuff. Like I will care about that. But when it comes to like my endeavors, very different mindset.
Yeah. Do you have a why? Like, if I were to ask you to articulate what you feel like your why is, do you have an idea of what that is?
It's just what I do. It's just like, I don't know, like it's what I know, not like a good identifiable one. It's just like, because if I'm not, then I'm not doing anything. Like,
right. Okay.
Or if I'm not like chasing one of these like goalposts that I'm gonna move later anyway, like then I just can't motivate myself and I can't focus on it. So it's like I'm doing this because it's what my brain can attach to. It's what I do. It luckily can turn into something where you like make money doing it and support your family, and like I'm not trying to get rich or anything doing any of this stuff. I just like doing it. I like the process, and I'm alive. So that's what I'm doing with my time.
Yeah. And again, like I've said this a handful of times throughout this conversation, but like, as you know, we've always been 1 degree of separation away from each other, you know, similar friends groups, all this sort of stuff. Like, so I've always been familiar with things that you have been involved in. Yeah. And again, from an outside perspective, like they've all worked to a different degree.
Okay. I've said this to other people. Usually it's in like random stuff like golf or like whatever sport type of stuff, but it's like not even this. It's so hard to say this without sounding full of myself, and that's not the intention. But like people say like, oh, like you're good at everything, and it's like I'm not good at everything at all. I just don't do things I'm bad at in front of anybody. Like,
that's actually great.
That's what's happening. Like,
yeah.
If I don't know, for anyone who's ever thought, which there aren't that many, trying hard to be like, this is not me being egotistical. Like, but you know, if you've ever been following what I do for whatever reason and think like, man, he's always doing something cool, you just haven't heard about the not cool things that I've done. Or I haven't let you hear about the things that I've done that are not going well.
Right.
Or I haven't done them at all because I know I'm not going to be good at it.
Yeah. You don't have to reveal it if you don't want to. What's one thing you wanted to try, did try, or kind of it's like on the back of your mind of like, I'd like to do this thing, I'd like to start a brand like this, but that you're like, you're probably not going to hear about it because I don't think I'd be good at it. Is there one?
This is something I have done a lot of that I'm okay at, but not good enough to keep doing it. Like writing music. Like,
okay, yeah.
I don't do it anymore because I'm like, I mean, maybe I would if like the business got to a point where I was like, okay, I have free time, I'll do this for fun. But like, it will never be something probably, I guess that's too hard of a never. But like, it's probably not something I'll do because like I have a lot of friends who are like really good at it, and I'm not really good at it. I'm just like pretty good at it. Like, like it's, I'm not that motivated to do it because I'm like, not going to be the best at it. I mean, I like play ice hockey. I'm not that good at that.
Yeah,
that's exercise. I don't know.
Right.
It's a little different, but it'll never be like a public facing thing.
Yeah. But again, I think that's a good thing to identify of like, I have had to reel myself in with that of, is this a genuine interest or is this something that can be a hobby? Mm-hmm. Is this something that I can just kind of be a part of? I don't have to try and be really, really great at it. I don't have to talk about it. Is this just a thing I can kind of just do for fun? Because
I guess there's like a bar there that it's like, is this something I do in private or is it something I'm putting out there as like a representation of me? Yeah. And like, crossing that bar is probably what I was just talking about. Like, most things I'll keep under that bar. Right.
It's like doing it for you or doing it of you is a way that I've heard it explained before of like, does this thing become like a part of my identity and it's like, yes, I own up to like this thing and it's a part of me and everyone will identify this thing with me, or is it a thing that I just do for me? Is it a thing that like, oh yeah, this is a hobby I do, something I do for fun. People might know about it, people might not. But I have been very guilty over the years, and I'm finally getting good at it, of turning all of my hobbies into career endeavors. And I'm now trying to be like, hey, I don't have to, just because I liked doing that thing one time doesn't mean I need to try and start a brand.
Like, I'm going to start a skydiving company.
Yeah.
Because that was life-changing.
That's
I've
for
never
years.
skydived.
I haven't either. No plans to. But yeah, that was it for years. It was just like something that would be interesting to me, and I'm like, I want to try it, and I need to make a brand around it. Why? Like, and I'm not saying no to all of those ideas, but
I just listened to the Mark Eshelman episode.
Okay,
but it's because you like making brands. Like he talked about like I thought I liked all these things, but really I just liked the way they were making these videos. Like maybe that's it for you. You just like making these things.
Yes, it is hard. Sometimes I've identified over the years that like if I have an idea for something, I'm like, oh, this would be such a cool brand, cool whatever. All I got to do is like jump into like Photoshop or something and like design the logo of the company. And then sometimes that's good enough. I've literally identified like it gets it out of my system. Where I'm like, that's hilarious. Cool. I see this outside of my brain. That's actually all I needed. I just needed a little creative exercise. I didn't need to go and figure out like, all right, how do I develop a coffee company? Hey, Sean, where do I get the bottles? Like
that's just good self-reflection.
Right.
Like, all right, I did the thing. You can move on now. Sometimes
just making the logo is enough.
Yeah.
And I'm like, cool, that could have existed, doesn't need to. I don't need to give it any more energy. Well, dude, before we sit here and talk for 6 hours, which is hard to not do. I mean, we're meeting each other for the very first time.
It's true.
I'm finding out that we are very similar in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So we could sit here for another 6 hours and talk about every
I think that's what the listeners need.
We've ever thought.
Hear us talk about ourselves for their entire day.
You know what? Let's dive back into it.
But this is for them.
Hey, this is for you guys, all right? We're
You're welcome.
For you. You're welcome. You get to listen to us and our genius ideas. Before we do talk for 6 hours, we can wrap this thing up.
We should.
Before we do, is there anything major that you feel like we haven't touched on that you're like, oh, dude, this has just hit me right now. We didn't talk about these 9 other businesses that I started, and we need to touch on them. Like anything we missed?
No.
Okay.
Tallon Electric is the main thing. We just released pedals with these bands Alpha Wolf and August Burns Red. Those were probably the 2 releases that were like, we're a real company now. Like these are our first, like, this isn't a test anymore. Like these are us really trying. It's gone really well. So I'm proud of those for sure.
Hell yeah. Well, in that case, I've got one final question for you. If you've listened back to any of the previous episodes, you know what question is coming. If you made it to the end, that is. But I ask the same exact question at the end of all these episodes. So now it's your turn. So right now, I want you to pretend that everybody, everywhere in the world is listening to this episode. They can hear you speak. You got a live mic attached to everybody. We've touched on so many different things. We've touched on like moving the goalpost, accepting the wins, starting the businesses, whatever. But right now, you get to share one thing with everybody everywhere. What do you really, really want them to hear?
I guess like I always have to like think about stuff I've learned about myself and hope that, those things are applicable to other people. But it's just like I'm at my best when I'm not thinking at all about what other people think about what I'm doing. I'm trying to get into the zone of like, I know the direction I'm trying to take, and I'm just going to focus on that. And like, when I do care about what other people think, like, it's never been helpful. And I know that's like something that everybody struggles with, is like, they have something on their plate, and like the people who can see them, they're worried about that. And it's valid. Like it's hard not to worry about that. But I do consciously try to like get in the zone where I'm just confident in what I'm doing. I'm not thinking about anybody else. So I don't know. I guess if you can consciously quiet that part of you and like stop worrying about what other people are thinking and like all of these things that bring stress and anxiety to all of us, like just tell it to shut up. It's not good. It's not useful.
Dude, this was a blast, man.
Yeah.
I am stoked.
A lot of fun.
Yeah. Very, very stoked we got to make this happen. Meet finally for the first time after...
Unreal.
Yeah. After years and years.
So long.
Somehow not meeting. We finally made it happen. And we talked about your life for like 2 hours. So I also appreciate even though you don't like the spotlight and you never want to take it for anything.
Yeah.
Thanks for accepting the spotlight.
Thanks.
To make a podcast out of
I
it.
know that's not a spotlight.
But you know what? It's shining great on you.
Basically.
Right now. It's
basically like
right
that,
on
yeah.
you, 100%. And now this story is etched forever in the annals of the internet. So
Yep.
it's just going to be out there forever. And people
Yeah,
are like,
and
wow.
like you just said, everyone listens to this?
Everyone.
That's
Everyone listens
incredible.
to it. So say
Wow.
hello to the world and say goodbye to the world as we wrap
Yeah.
this thing up.
Congratulations.
Dude, I can't thank you enough, man. We made a podcast.